Hi, I'm Snez, personal trainer, healthy lifestyle coach, and your guide to feeling your best. This podcast is a segment from my weekly radio show, Wellbeing Wednesdays, broadcast live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's all about sharing real, practical tips to help you move more, eat better, and live healthier without the overwhelm. Let's dive in, shall we? Coming up next, let's just get straight into it. And this is a question that I get continuously, and that is, why am I not losing weight? And I get that people are showing up, training consistently, making better food choices, yet the scales don't seem to be budging. And if that sounds familiar, then this episode or this segment here is for you. And I understand the frustration. I've worked with many people over lots and lots of years watching this frustration. It's very real. And the important thing is to really understand from the very beginning is it's not about willpower. It's not about personal failure. The truth is that there's some common reasons that are holding you back that you may not even be realizing. And over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to walk you through what research shows are the biggest hidden factors that do slow down weight loss or impede it, get in the way of weight loss, and most importantly, exactly what we can do about them. So when we're working hard and not seeing results, it's pretty tempting to just try harder or restrict even more or try something different. And that's what's interesting, is that a lot of the times, whatever we're actually trying probably just needs that extra little bit of time. I oftentimes see that people don't realize how long change actually does take. And what we're also starting to understand now with some new research is that oftentimes it's those small overlooked habits or biological responses that we're not aware of and we don't have the education around that are actually quietly undermining our progress and stopping those changes from happening. And when we can understand some of these, we can flip what we're actually trying to do, and we can move from struggling or being harder on ourselves, being stricter, trying something different, and we can move into some strategies that are actually going to support our changes. So let's dig into some of the top reasons why this happens. Firstly, the most important thing to understand is inaccurate tracking, and I'm talking about inaccurate tracking of results. Now, what I do find a lot of is that when people are using the scale at home, it can be very inaccurate in terms of what information you're gaining from that one particular number. Now, in particular, if you are starting to include resistance training into your weekly schedule and part of your exercise regime, there is going to be a shift in the upwards direction when we start to include resistance training. And that is because when you start to strengthen your body, generally speaking, and you definitely start prioritizing protein, the combination of those two things is going to equal an increase in weight. And that is because you are growing muscle, which is actually what you want to do. Alongside of the muscle, though, what a lot of people don't realize is that when muscle mass increases, our water that our body holds also increases. Muscles carry a lot of water, so when we increase muscle mass, we're also going to increase how much water we are actually holding. And so that can lead to a gain. So even though you may be decreasing body fat, if you've had an increase in muscle mass, especially within that first month, trying to measure your progress is going to seem that you are actually not moving. Especially if you've lost body fat and you've increased your muscle mass on the scales, it can look like nothing's changed. Or it can indicate that you've actually had a gain if your body hasn't actually let go of any body fat just yet. Now, that's in the initial stages. And I think those initial stages are the critical times where we choose to either continue doing what we're doing, or we just go where we decide, well, this is just not working. I need to try something else. And it's in those initial moments that I wish I could just give people the right data. And you can get the right data by going and getting some sort of a body composition scan, giving people the right data that will give them proof, because that's what we're using. We're using the scales as a measure, and it's a very inaccurate measure. Whereas if you had the correct data, then you can get a really good sense of, hey, this is great. Yes, that one single number of total body weight does look like it's gone up or hasn't changed. However, this is improving, and all these different markers of our body composition are actually improving. So I think that's the most important thing, is to understand tracking. The other aspect of tracking that I want to address is calorie in versus calorie out. It's not always the way that you think it and understand it. And this is, again, I think another ineffective thing to track, especially if we're just trying to shift some general weight. So studies are consistently showing that we tend to overestimate how much we're consuming by up to 20 or 30%. And we also underestimate how much we are actually using up in a day. And this difference in overestimating how much we're moving and how much we're utilizing compared to underestimating how much we're actually consuming is going to create a situation where you're probably not going to see a shift. And so the best fix for this is with body composition, get some accurate data so you actually know what you're tracking. And secondly, with calorie counting, stop over-obsessing about calorie counting and instead focusing on consistent healthy habits, making healthier choices, and more importantly, listening to your hunger and responding when we are hungry, and then stopping at that 80% full. So the first issue, I think, is, are you actually tracking the right things? And do you need to be tracking any of those things is another topic of conversation. The second thing is feeling that we're eating healthy, but we are still over-consuming. And not all healthy foods are created equal, and nutrient-dense foods such as nuts and seeds and oils are all really great for your health, but they can be calorie dense. And it's easy to eat more than you realize, or it's easy to avoid those foods because we feel that they are too high in fat, and then we're adding sugars from other foods to kind of fill that gap. So we need to make sure in this situation that we aren't over-consuming also on healthy options. Like oftentimes I'll get people that will say, oh, I just have as much salad as I want, or I just have as much fruit as I want because it's a healthy option. And even though these options are healthy, we can still overconsume. So again, we need to just be making sure that we are balancing out our healthy fats or our vegetables or our fruit with protein, and making sure that we're getting enough fiber in there so that we are going to feel fuller with less food, because even healthy options can be overconsumed. And making sure that we are including nuts and seeds because they are great for our health, but not over-consuming, because ultimately even those healthy options can put us in a surplus of energy that we don't utilize throughout the day. The next thing to be mindful of is hidden calories that are found in foods that we don't realize can add up quite quickly. So things such as just grabbing a handful of snacks, or finishing leftovers, or just grabbing a couple of lollies out of a jar as you walk through. These are the things and habits that we have throughout the day that can be quite mindless, but they actually do add up. Or things such as being really great during the week, but then having cheat days, or being a little bit more relaxed in terms of what we're doing throughout the weekend. So these are two sort of areas that you can actually be finding yourself going backwards in terms of your progress, because you're underestimating the impact of adding some of those foods in mindlessly, or over consuming on the weekend as a treat or as a reward. So just being mindful. Some of the other ways that calories can add up quite fast without you realizing it are sauces, dressings, things like coffee creamers. Alcohol is a big one that people don't tend to realize how much alcohol actually does contribute and add up, or also that alcohol can affect how mindful we are with our consumption, and we can then overconsume on snacks while we are drinking alcohol as well. But we can add a lot of extra calories throughout our day without actually experiencing it in terms of our satiety or affecting our hunger. So making sure that we are being mindful of when we're eating, trying to eat at our regular meals, avoiding that sort of nibbling and snacking in between, and then just try to swap out for some lighter options that you can with some of those coffees or creamers or dressings or sauces. What can you do to try to reduce them for lighter calorie options without still feeling though that you're cutting everything out and depriving yourself? So just be mindful where those calories are actually adding up, that you may not be considering that or counting them because you're not actually feeling that sort of overfullness through these little snacks and bits and pieces throughout the day. Then the other thing, point 4 is overtraining and under recovery. This is another thing that I see a lot of, that people don't actually understand the impact that overtraining can actually have. And it does feel quite counterintuitive but pushing too hard without enough rest can actually raise the stress hormone cortisol, which actually promotes fat storage and can make weight loss a lot harder. And that is an element that I definitely see, and trying to convince people to do less activity can be quite challenging because there is that fear that I need to exercise every day and need to exercise quite intensely. But that level of stress on the body, as I mentioned, does increase the cortisol levels, but also remembering too that when we do increase the amount of muscle in our body, muscle requires more energy to survive. So we are going to need more fuel, which if we're not then adequately feeding those workouts with protein and fiber and nutrients and healthy fats, if we are resorting to our old sort of snacking behaviors or having chocolate or chips or just biscuits or nutrient empty options throughout our day, then our body can feel quite ravenous and can lead to binges and over-consuming, because when we do exercise, we are burning a lot of calories. It does impact our body, and we need to be mindful that we are not overdoing that, firstly, so that we're not creating a body that feels like it's under attack and then having to hold on to more food in the event of a famine or in the event of the next stress in our body, which is how our bodies are perceiving it. And that's why they will hold on to that extra fat storage in the event that our body's going to need to elicit the fight or flight response. We've got that energy ready to go. So research does show us that making sure that we are integrating rest days as well as stress management and 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep will optimize our fat burning ability. So when we're thinking about shifting weight and it's just not working and we feel distressed by it, we're putting all this time and energy into training, sometimes it may be just those 3 things. Have a rest day. Let's manage that stress. Let's take some time to relax our bodies, to enjoy some downtime and get to bed earlier, maybe sleep in rather than getting up early and doing that gym session. And I'm not talking about doing that every day because obviously that's not going to work for us either. But if you are training 6 or 7 mornings a week, that's probably not helping you. And if you feel like, how many more days can I possibly exercise? Well, maybe you are doing too much, and maybe you are creating a body that is burning less because it is feeling that stress of that overtraining and not having the opportunity to recover. So having a look at that, I think, is really important, because sometimes, and quite often, more exercise isn't necessarily the answer. It's about being more strategic with the type of exercise and then feeding our bodies adequately and the right combination of foods so that we can get more nutrients, less calories, and strengthen and create bodies that have a higher metabolism, which we run the risk of deteriorating that when we are overtraining. So number 5 is neglecting strength training. This is another thing that oftentimes goes hand in hand with overtraining, and that is just adding too much cardio in. Now, cardio is great. It's good for our heart and, our cardiovascular health, but too much cardio can have a negative impact. But more importantly, the impact of cardio or excessive amounts of cardio is usually taking away from your time that you can devote to strength training. And we know that building and maintaining muscle is absolutely crucial for increasing our metabolism. And muscle tissue burns more calories at rest, and it improves your insulin sensitivity, which are 2 key factors in body fat loss. So that's something that we need to make sure that we are including some form of strength training. Research and studies show that 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week are going to help to reshape your body and boost the fat loss through extra calorie burn and a higher metabolism. The other thing is too, when you consistently eat less and you're training more, especially if you're jumping onto a particular diet or you're throwing yourself into a health kick or something like that, when you consistently eat less and train more, your metabolism can adapt by slowing down, and it goes into a preservation mode, which we call metabolic adaptation. And it's why weight loss can plateau after initial success that you may experience when the body doesn't kind of cotton on to what's going on and doesn't have the opportunity to protect itself. So what we can do in this situation is vary your calorie intake to make sure that you are getting adequate nutrients on the days that you are training, and focusing on making sure that we're getting better, healthier, more wholesome choices that are higher in protein and fiber and nutrients, and just be patient with your progress over the weeks and months so that you aren't overdoing the training and feeling like you need to do more, but you are working with your body to make sure that you are getting the benefits of it. So if you are feeling like you're working hard and you're not seeing the scales move, it's really about the amount of effort that you're putting in. It's usually about some hidden habits that you've had with snacking. It might be about balancing your training approach. It may be just about getting a better, more effective measure, because it's extraordinary how many times I have seen members who have made some changes. They've committed to 4 weeks of exercise and improved eating habits, and they jump on the scale at home and they're just feeling horrible because nothing's changed. And then they jump on the scanner and they see that they have decreased in body fat, they have increased in muscle mass. And it's amazing how that improved data can completely change the mindset and a person's ability and motivation to stick to the plan. And that's what is the most important thing, is to make sure that you are sticking to progress over time, not being too aggressive with what you're trying to achieve, and not trying to make too many restrictions at the one time. And also understanding that because you feel that something isn't working, just give it that little bit longer, because remember, your body is something that you need to work alongside of, not something that you're battling against. And when you know some of the areas that you need to look for that you probably haven't been paying attention to, you'll find that real change will actually start to happen, and you'll feel capable, you'll feel in control, and the changes will start to reflect the work that you're putting in. And you may find it doesn't have to be to the extent that you initially thought. So have a bit of a think about what are some of those aspects that you can adapt and change, and what's sort of triggered in your life that you can go, well, actually, I didn't think to do that, or maybe I do need to do that little bit less. But give some of those tips a go, because weight loss is very much achievable when you are being mindful of the right things that you should be paying attention to. But if you do have any questions on this topic, because it is such a big topic, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Jump onto the Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group, and ask away. Thanks for joining me on this segment from Wellbeing Wednesdays, as heard live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who might find it helpful, and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to catch the live broadcast? Well, you can tune in Wednesdays from 12 till 2 p.m. on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM, or find my info on Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group. Take care, stay healthy, and remember, it's the little choices every day that create big changes. Talk soon.